Past the first ruddy glow of dawn, the Riverlanders' outriders drew aside a thicket of purple heather and revealed the stretch of Renly Baratheon's encampment spilling over the meadow below Bitterbridge like a jeweled tapestry. 40,000 banners, stags rampant upon summer green, horned skulls upon sable. 100 minor sigils stitched by village wives, eager for glory, snapped in the soft breeze drifting up from the mander. Metal chimed, hooves pawed, voices rose in laughter too careless for war, all of it wrapped in a faint haze of wood smoke that smelled of cedar and roasting boar. Catelyn Stark halted atop her gelding and let her reins go slack, studying the panorama with a wary, widowed calm. War had many faces. Here it chose to hide its snarling mouth behind silk and song. Behind her, Sir Brynden Rivers, always the blackfish to her heart, though never so much her black and shadowing as now, eased his destroyer to a stop. He said nothing at first, merely observed, weary eyes following the silver glimmer of pavilions to where the largest rose-striped tent stood at the meadow's center like a brocade castle. Every road in the camp flowed toward it. There, Catelyn knew, Renly waited with his easy mirth and brazen crown of golden antlers, convinced no fate could dare deny so shining a prince his throne. She had sailed from Riverrun expecting to rebuff him as Robb's envoy had done at Moat Cailin. Yet on the long river journey south, past charred hamlets where wolves picked through ashes, past the shattered holdfast of Hayford, where silent men swung from apple boughs, past the cold, unburied soldiers who were once proud Freys. Each mile had weighed her children's future heavier upon her breast. Robb was 17, a boy still, though crowned and called king in the north. He had taken victories enough to swell men's hearts, but summer victories shriveled when winter set its jaws. His line stretched thin across 200 leagues. Bolton men murmured beneath pale banners. Karstarks bled for vengeance. The Freys snarled behind watery smiles. Against them marched Tywin Lannister, who had once crushed the Tarbecks in a summer fortnight, and Sir Jaime, still a captive though rumors whispered the Kingslayer's chains might be sundered by stealth or bribery any dawn. And behind every Lannister sword glimmered that lethal Lannister gold. So when yesterday's council ended and Renly Baratheon, bold as a harvest lion, offered his hand, "Join me, my lady, and we shall grind the lions beneath stag's hoof and wolf's fang both," Catelyn's resolve did a small, imperceptible shift, like the first sigh of ice cracking on a winter pond. She felt it again now, listening to the jubilant clash of lutes and war horns drifting uphill. "Your Grace," Sir Brynden prodded softly, for she wore the title now in Robb's name, though it sat upon her shoulders like grief's own mantle. A moment. She breathed, tasting the camp's scents. Roasting onions, apple cider simmering in cauldrons, and beneath it, the iron tang of sharpened steel. "It is so alive here, uncle, as if battle is naught but a mask of colors. Life struts loudest above an open grave," the blackfish answered. "Do not be fooled. Those banners will burn, those lutes will fall silent, and the crows will feast as gladly on bright green as on drab gray." She nodded, yet the surge of living energy below pulled at her like a tide. She thought suddenly of Bran in his wheeled chair, fingers white upon the carved arms as Maester Luwin turned him toward the sunlit godswood. She thought of Rickon, a lost pup howling at night for a mother gone. She thought of Sansa, still a hostage to the boy king who had murdered her lord father, and of Arya, vanished like smoke. If Renly's power and Robb's could be welded together, perhaps it was a hammer blow strong enough to break chains and open castle gates. "Come," she said at last, "let us descend." The ride down the gentle slope carried them into the humming arteries of the host. Gold cloaks of the city watch stood here in handfuls, deserters perhaps, eager to claim they had been with victors from the start. Stormlanders and leather brigandines called jests to reach knights glittering like sunrise on water. Tyrell levies hefted spears of yew and chattered of home orchards heavy with fruit. No man looked hungry. Catelyn saw wheels of cheese stacked like stones beside casks of arbor red, wagon loads of oats for horses, pallets of salted cod for men. Her own northern column sometimes went 2 days on acorn bread. She felt again the weight of her son's slender triumphs. A white knight rode forth to meet them, armor chased with silver leaves. Sir Loras Tyrell, Renly's bright spearpoint, saluted with rose-plumed helm beneath his arm, but his eyes lingered on Catelyn's cloak, a direwolf stitched in black and gray across the stark white of winter fur. "Lady Stark," he greeted, voice courteous yet edged, "His Grace awaits you. Word is sent ahead you come beneath peace banner." She inclined her head, allowing only the demure courtesy due between sovereign courts. "My nephew Edmure's device flies above us and yours, sir. Between Tully Trout and Tyrell Rose we may share fresh water and salt alike. And now..." The Knight of Flowers smiled. Too perfectly, perhaps. He led them past rank upon rank of pavilions, though Catelyn sensed half the camp followed with eyes and whispers. Crossbowmen polishing quarrels paused. Grooms froze midway curbing destriers. She and Brynden alone wore northern gray and river-run blue in a sea of green. By the time the largest pavilion loomed, she had counted at least 4 subtle companies of guards flanking their route. Renly trusted, but not that much. Within, the tent soared on painted poles of carved cedar. Silk walls glimmered in sun-slanted moats. A long table bore silver plates heaped with sugared oranges, bowls of honeyed almonds, crusty loaves steaming from hidden ovens. Flowers festooned every corner, blue irises, snapdragons, nodding tulips. And over all drifted the cool fragrance of mint crushed beneath slippered feet. Renly Baratheon rose from a chair of carved weirwood, antlered crown catching sunbeams like struck flame. At his side, Brienne of Tarth loomed in sapphire armor, broad hands resting lightly on sword belt. Catelyn had met her yestereve and seen something raw as unshorn stone in the maiden's eyes, a reverence for Renly verging on worship. Opposite Brienne stood Ser Courtnay Penrose, vigilant steward of Storm's End, and beside him Maester Huth of the Citadel, quills bristling like spears in his sleeve. "Lady Stark," Renly declared, voice deep as a well yet warm. "Welcome again. It gladdens me you return so soon after our first parley." She managed a graceful curtsy though traveling boots pinched. "Your Gracie's courtesy honors House Stark. I come bearing words I pray will serve us both." "None?" Renly gestured. Seats were drawn, wine poured. Only when goblets brimmed, Tyrol gold chased with stag sigils, did he speak further. "You slept little, I think," he observed, eyes kind yet measuring. "Heard you pacing past the second watch. A heavy burden sits on those shoulders." "The mother's burden," she conceded quietly, "and the king's envoys. Yet you come alone but for a single night. I take that as token of trust." "Trust," she echoed. Her gaze flitted to the blackfish. Brynden's lined face betrayed nothing save flint-hard resolve. Then she looked to Renly. "My son rules a cradle kingdom, still fragile. Winter will come, and he must stand against a realm that would see him bent or dead. Alone, his chances grow thin. Together with you they might prove thick as summer wheat." A silence bloomed, neither tense nor easy, like hush before a dove lands. Loras Tyrell's plumage rustled faintly. Brienne's gauntlet creaked. Somewhere beyond silk walls a bard plucked at a harp, weaving in and out of conversation like a honeybee through lavender. "I hope I hear assent in your words," Renly said eventually. "But say them plain, so no raven can twist their meaning." Catelyn's fingers brushed the direwolf clasp at her throat. "House Stark will accept your alliance, your grace. Robb will bend no knee. He is steadfast in his people's wish to rule themselves, but he will march beside you as ally and equal. The North seeks only to be left in peace and in honor. You ask his swords and banners, you shall have them. In turn you must pledge to break the Lannisters, free my daughters, and recognize the North's sovereignty forevermore." Sir Courtnay sucked in a breath. Maester Huth's quill scratched furiously. Renly, though, simply smiled, as if he had known this course from the moment she entered his camp. "Lady Stark," he said, "you give me what I desired most, certainty. I accept your terms, save one small amendment." Her heart thudded. "Speak it." "The realm cannot abide 2 kings for long. That wound will fester. So here is my offer. Robb Stark shall keep his title king in the north, yet as High King I shall be acknowledged ruler of the 7 kingdoms south of the Neck. 2 thrones, but 1 heart. I will swear before gods and men that the North's ancient rights be protected in perpetuity. Let written charter seal it. Nainsunai Helen. Maester Huth flourished a parchment. Already drafted, my lady, he murmured, pending your signature and Tyresh ink. Catelyn felt the tent tilt to breath. It was a higher price than she had authority to pay. Nonetheless, she remembered Ned's quiet voice in the Godswood at Winterfell, telling tales of old kings who knelt to Aegon fire and kept their lives, and others who fought and lost everything. Did titles matter more than sons and daughters breathing? She saw Sansa again, pale, tear-stained face forced to smile beside the monster Joffrey. The parchment might be a key. Robb must give his consent. She answered. I cannot bind him unseen. Send a raven, Renly urged. Meanwhile your knights may sup at my tables, your wounded ride in my wagons. She nodded, though the raven's flight north would take days and reply more. In that span, armies could march. Yet Delane tethered hope to hazard. The realm churned like a cauldron left on fire's edge. She summoned courage forged in the crypts of Winterfell, where secrets whispered of kings long dust. Then let us draft the terms for when the raven returns, she said. So no word is wasted. Ink dried, seals were melted, wax stamped. Renly called for his brother's great sword, Storm's End, and laid its golden pommel upon the parchment, swearing by the steel that had slain Rhaegar Targaryen's fiercest. Catelyn placed her gloved hand beside the blade, and though she spoke for Robb, the vow felt carved into her own bones. When ritual ended, Renly invited her to tour the camp. She accepted, eager to weigh the temper of these southern levies. Brienne escorted her along the shade of banner poles, explaining companies and captains with plain devotion. The maiden's voice steadied only when recounting feats of Renly, how he had rallied Storm's End after Robert's rebellion, how he had brought laughter to boys orphaned by the Greyjoys' raid. Catelyn listened, noting deeper currents in Brienne's eyes. Not the simple worship of vassal for liege, but something quietly ablaze. In return, she shared small tales of Robb's first sword stroke in the Wolfswood, of Greyjohn Umber's roar of loyalty at the crowning. Midday sun climbed, the camp's clamor swelled. At a field near the river, knights jousted in practice tilts. Loras Tyrell unhorsed 3 challengers in swift fluid bouts, rose petals bursting from his lance tips as his squire scattered them for show. Yet when he saw Catelyn, he slowed his mount and offered her a rosebud white as first snow. She accepted courteously, though the scent recalled the blank marble of Ned's tomb under Winterfell's crypt. Food arrived where they stood, platters of trout glazed with lemon, barley cakes soaked in clover honey, and flagons of chilled milk. Catelyn forced nibble and sip, lest politeness be mistaken as disdain. At last, she excused herself to pen the raven for Robb. Brienne lent a table inside her modest tent, away from Renly's silk forest. The parchment near trembled under Catelyn's quill as she detailed the accord, pressing calm words against a hurricane of uncertainty. She told her son of Renly's strength, of the Reach's granaries, of the good plain sense in joining forces, and urged him toward consent. But at the close she added one line, not of politics. Trust your heart, Robb. Whatever road you choose, I follow. That night torches cast amber halos around the feast fires. Minstrels played on lutes while jugglers tossed knives lit with wildfire, green flames dancing in arcs like summer dragonflies. Even Sir Brynden found a cup of Dornish red and permitted a faint smile as he watched. Catelyn could not. The music gnawed at her with memories of Bran's laughter the day he scaled Winterfell's tallest turret, of Arya's shrill whistles in the yard, of Benjen's deep laugh across Hearthsmoke. She slipped from the revel and walked beside the mander where reeds whispered secrets to dusk. There she encountered Lady Margaery Tyrell, cloaked in emerald velvet, unescorted. The girl's brown eyes, limpid yet keen, studied Catelyn with gentle curiosity. "My lady," Margaery said, dipping a courtesy so graceful it seemed natural as breathing. "The camp tells tales of your wisdom. I am glad you choose us," Catelyn answered politely, but Margaery tilted her head, hair gleaming russet in torchlight, and spoke softer. "Some say 2 queens will sit thrones when all is ended. You might guide one." The word startled her. A mother must guide her children first. Queens have children, Marguerite replied, and they need wise women beside them. She offered no more, only drifted away with a smile that lingered like a garden scent. Catelyn returned to her assigned pavilion, where two northern men-at-arms kept quiet watch. She slept at last, yet dreamed of direwolves howling under summer moons grown strange and green. Morning broke with horns, not war horns, but those of ceremony. Renly convened his lords near the meadow's heart for public announcement of the Northern Alliance's intent, pending Robb's seal. Catelyn stood at his right, the Blackfish at her left. She felt dozens of gazes weigh her. Randyll Tarley's hawk eyes, Randyll Floren's calculating squint, the prancing disdain of Bryce Caron. Sir Loras shone bright and proud. Brienne hovered just behind Renly's throne chair, one mailed hand resting on its back as if to guard the very wood. Renly's voice rang out. He framed the accord as kinship renewed between first men of the North and Storm, and Reach valor. Spoke of Robert's laughter binding them once. Promised the stag and wolf would tear the lion's hide. Cheers thundered. Yet across the throng Catelyn glimpsed several lords conferring behind gloved hands. Allies of Stannis perhaps, disguised within Stormlander ranks. Or Tyrell cousins uneasy at dividing a realm. The ceremony concluded with libations poured upon the earth. Catelyn felt something subtle shift, as though hidden powers had marked the moment. Wind gusted cool from the river. The banners of the Reach rippled like fields of grain bending to sighs. The day lengthened into tactical councils. Maps unfurled atop wooden trestles. The King's Road, the Gold Road, the Blackwater's mouth. Renly's chief commanders spoke of flanking Tywin from south and west, while Robb pressed from the Twins through the Riverlands. Catelyn listened but offered little. She had no seat in war's geometry. Still, she noted each calculation, each eagerness to spill blood that none here had yet tasted. All seemed certain victory would be swift, as if the gods themselves had promised triumph in exchange for bright plumes and shining armor. That evening ravens came. One from Highgarden with news Lord Mace Tyrell gathered 10,000 more. Another from Old Town, where the Hightowers mulled their course. But none from Robb yet. Catelyn paced, telling herself winds could delay a bird, or storms. Yet the sky remained a polished mirror of evening blue. While she waited, Renly invited her to witness the training of his new Rainbow Guard. 7 knights sworn to protect him as Robert's Kingsguard once did. Brienne was blue, Loras green, Sir Emmon Coy red, Sir Robar Royce white, Sir Parman Crane yellow, Sir Geard Morrigan purple, and Sir Bryce Caron blacked. They sparred beneath torchlight, colored cloaks swirling like banners in a storm. Their swords clashed in dazzling sweeps. Sweat shone upon faces taut with devotion. Catelyn wondered if such blaze could stand firm when arrows cut the air like winter geese. Later, alone at her writing table, she spread a fresh parchment and set quill to ink, not for Robb but for Maester Luwin at Winterfell. She wrote of Bran's welfare, instructing extra guards upon the walls, counsel for Rickon's tempers, allowances for the woman Nan to soothe him. She wrote of deepening snows yet to come, of stores to be laid in, and she slipped into the letter a pressed white rose from Sir Loras, symbol less of gallantry than of fragile hope, that the South's bounty might one day crest North's cold borders. She was sealing the missive when Sir Brynden entered. He carried no torch, yet his eyes glinted. Scouts returned, he murmured. Stannis sails from Dragonstone, 30 galleys and more. He means to strike Storm's End before Renly can return. Catelyn's heart lurched. How long? 2 days, 3 at most. And Renly's host is here, half a realm away. She straightened. We must tell him. We must decide if this is our war, Brynden said softly, or Southron quarrel. Robb's banner flies beside Renly's now. On parchment alone, her uncle cautioned. No raven yet. She felt as though iron jaws closed about her chest. She saw again Renly's knights laughing, the camp's colors. But Storm's End was Renly's heart, and hearts bled when besieged. Still, she answered, voice low, honor binds more firmly than wax. If we desert him at first turn, who will trust the wolf again? The Blackfish touched her shoulder and bowed his head. As you will, my lady. I stand with you." They found Renly already in council, reading the same grim tidings. His mirth had dimmed, but he only squared his jaw and ordered trumpets. Before dawn, the host must be in motion towards Storm's End. Yet even a stag fleet of riders could not carry 40,000 men across 200 leagues with the swiftness of a gull. The council argued, hours slipping into dark. Leave half the army to march slow while Renly and a vanguard rode hard. Split the strength and risk Tywin's counter? Send ravens to the Tyrells to cut Stannis off by sea? Catelyn watched, silent, aware each plan braided her own son's fate further into southern snares. At last she spoke. "Send me ahead," she proposed. "A single boat upriver to Massey's Hook, then overland to Storm's End. I will treat with Stannis in Renly's name and with Robb's. I carry weight as an envoy to both kings." Renly weighed her, surprise flickering like candle flame. "To treat with my brother? He has iron in place of blood." "Even iron may bend under true heat," she said. "And should he refuse, I buy you time." Brienne protested first, but Renly held up a hand. "Lady Stark risks much. I shall not command it." Catelyn raised her chin. "I was a Tully of Riverrun, wife to Ned Stark of Winterfell. I have crossed half this realm in war and worse. I know what I offer." So it was agreed. Before moonset, she stood upon the riverbank where a sleek galley waited, sails furled like wings at rest. The Blackfish would captain her escort of 20 picked archers. Renly clasped her forearms, antler crown removed, face earnest. "If you win my brother, you win the realm," he told her. She answered only, "I would win peace, if the realm allows." The galley slid into black waters, torches fading behind. As Bitterbridge dwindled to pinpricks, Catelyn leaned against the rail, letting wind cold her cheeks. Beneath the keel, the river whispered, secrets older than high gardens and iron thrones. She listened, heart full of fear yet strangely hopeful, as if the current itself promised a path forward unseen by men drunk on banners. Night deepened. Stars scattered like frost upon a raven's wing. And somewhere far ahead, Storm's End rose upon its lonely crag, and Stannis Baratheon, grim, unyielding, cast in shadow, waited for dawn to test his brother's claim. Catelyn Stark, envoy of 2 kings, mother of 5 once innocent children, sailed toward him bearing parchment still wet with promises, and within her, a quiet vow that if the world must founder, she would not let it take her children's future without a fight born of ice and fire alike. Hey! Ah! Inside the low-hulled river galley, the steady creak of oarlocks lent rhythm to the hush of night. Catelyn sat upon a folded wool blanket beneath the awning, tracing the constellations drift between the rigging spars. Each dip of the oars sent green-black ripples unfurling behind, moonlight breaking into slender threads that winked and vanished in the wake. Candle lanterns had been shuttered to slits, only enough glow to keep the coxswain's course by tree line. Brynden walked the deck's length every quarter hour, a silent figure with crossbow in hand, and the river carried the galley like a secret handed from branch to branch. At dawn the sky ripened to a pale apricot. Mist clung to the surface, weaving through reed beds and swallowing sound. She felt as though they voyaged upon some veil between worlds. The hush, so complete, no bird dared cry. They passed beneath half-collapsed stone arches where whore-kings had once demanded tolls, now choked by wild roses whose thorns scraped the hull in feather-light caresses. At a bend where ivy draped a mossy milestone, Brynden pointed to an inlet narrow as a squire's belt. They steered inside. Waterfowl erupted and wheeled away, leaving hollow calls echoing under the tangled canopy of willow. There, the Blackfish ordered the rowers to rest. He joined her near the stern, helm tucked beneath arm. "We'll wait for fog to rise," he murmured. "Stannis' outriders may patrol northward. Better unseen." Catelyn pulled her cloak tighter. "How many leagues?" 30 by river," he said. "But the Hook's coastline curves, twice that to march. We make landfall at Drumlin Cove before dusk, if the wind favors us." She nodded, yet her gaze strayed to the east where the sun lifted like a blood-orange disk. There lay Storm's End, though unseen. A fortress older than ruins, perched upon relentless surf. She imagined cliffs scoured by centuries of salt spray, the towers jutting like broken spears against low clouds, and beneath it all the slow heartbeat of ancient stone that had defied Aegon's dragons and Durin's ghosts alike. Stannis would be within, gaunt, unblinking, fed on iron duty. How did one bend such metal? They resumed rowing mid-morning, gliding past oat fields where farmers glowered beneath straw hats. Occasional figures hailed from banks, the archers melted into shadow, crossbows leveled until certain no banner hid behind a welcoming smile. Once, a cluster of half-armored men, bright yellow suns upon quartered orange, galloped into view, trailing dust along a causeway. House Penrose of parchments, sworn to Stannis. The riders paused at river's edge a moment, shading eyes, then spurred on. Catelyn exhaled only when their hoofbeats dwindled. Afternoon stretched, golden and warm. The galley skirted flats where wild horses grazed, white tails flicking. Dragonflies skimmed the surface. Frogs croaked in lazy chorus. Brynden allowed a brief halt near a sandbar thick with cranberries. The crew filled skins, and Catelyn waded knee-deep to rinse dust from her face, savoring the cool kiss of current. She recalled summers in River Run, splashing with Edmure and Lysa, father's voice booming from the terrace to mind the undertow. The memory felt older than she. They set off once more, oars biting with fresh vigor. But by late afternoon clouds swept over the horizon, long iron shrouds that turned sun to dim pewter. Wind stiffened, slapping the river into nervous chop. The galley pitched and yawed. Rowers grunted to keep rhythm. Catelyn steadied herself against the gunwale, cloak whipping. The Blackfish shouted orders. Shorten sail, shift ballast aft. Lightning flickered somewhere beyond the eastern hills. Silent still, like a giant blinking, Catelyn felt tension coil within the crew. Storm's herald, one muttered. Another spat, thrice for luck. They were nearing the lands where the Storm Kings once ruled, where tempests were said to answer the drums of dead gods. When thunder finally spoke, a deep, rolling bellow, the rowers changed cadence instinctively, as though the sound had reached into their chests and throttled their hearts. The squall struck without grace, wind shrieking out of a curtain of rain so dense the river vanished. Stinging sheets hammered faces, filled boots, sluiced across deckboards. Brynden's voice cut through. Oars shipped, run with current. They raised crude storm sails fashioned during midday's lull, triangular scraps lashed to makeshift yards. The galley heeled, then surged forward like an arrow loosed. Catelyn clutched the railing. Water scudded sideways across her cheeks, hair plastered in dark ropes. Yet beyond fear, a wild exhilaration leapt in her blood. This was the world as the first men had known it, raw and untamed, and she traveling its heart. They raced thus for what felt a bell's turn before the rain eased to fat drops. The clouds tore open. Evening light spilled upon a coast bristling with pines. Ahead crouched a crooked jetty of rubblestone. Drumlin Cove, their mark. The Blackfish deemed landfall critical. They could not risk night siege on open water. Two men leapt to throw lines. The hull scraped, groaned, then settled alongside the crude quay. Under sullen lavender sky, Brynden arranged watches, posted archers amid dunes tufted with marram grass. Catelyn stretched sore limbs and followed him to a wind-shaped boulder above the shore. There they gazed upon the sea, black glass flecked with whitecaps. In that vastness she sensed Storm's End, though low clouds veiled it. Another day's march, Brynden said. With luck, we reach the castle before Stannis' galleys seal the bay. Will the luck hold? She asked. He shrugged. We make our own. Yet I mislike shadows whispering round that place. Later, by a driftwood fire, she spoke with Captain Ulan, once a cell sail of the Stepstones. He knew tales, of Storm's End's unbroken walls, of storms that rose from calm seas in heartbeats, of a red woman who walked the galley's deck at dusk, with eyes like smoking rubies. Catelyn listened, unease budding. If sorcery stalked these shores, parley would tread treacherous ground. They set off before dawn, 20 men winding through dunes, and up a goat track that meandered into low hills. The land smelled of salt-sodden earth and heather. Clouds scudded overhead, torn to tatters by high winds. Brynden kept scouts ahead, 2 flanking, 1 rear dart eye. Catelyn marched near center, cloak hooded, eyes on every thicket. By mid-morning they traversed a ridge and glimpsed the castle at last. Storm's End rose from a jagged promontory like the broken hilt of a titan's sword, colossal drum tower encircled by lesser bastions. Seabirds wheeled around its ramparts, waves crashed far below, throwing up veils of mist. Even from leagues off, the fortress projected cold defiance. Catelyn felt small beside it. They paused in a copse of storm-twisted oaks. A thin column of smoke drifted from the castle's cistern chimney. Life within. But between their ridge and the sea lay Stannis' host. Tents of dun and gray scattered across 3 inland spurs, maybe 5,000 men. Not large compared to Renly's gleaming horde, yet stern. Ziga catapults huddled like squat toads. Supply wagons lined the dirt road. Banners snapped, crowned stag and fiery heart, equal size. Queen Selese's sigil, wed to Stannis' own. And above the largest pavilion hung a banner of pure red, emblazoned by a single 7-pointed star aflame. Catelyn sensed the men's unease. The fiery heart belonged to Arlor, the Lord of Light. Foreign as Quarth, unsettling as plague. "We go forward under white flag," she said, voice steady though stomach knotted. "Let no hand touch hilt unless bidden by me." Brynden selected 2 men to bear a plain banner of truce, stitched hastily from linen. They descended the ridge path into valley gloom, dew still brushing boots. As they neared outer pickets, Stannis sentries emerged, grim in plain steel, helms fashioned like narrow-eyed skulls. They formed a line across the trail. Halbards grounded. Catelyn stepped ahead, hood back, gray streaks in auburn hair catching pale light. "Lady Catelyn Stark, envoy of King Robb and of King Renly," she announced. "I seek audience with Lord Stannis Baratheon." One guard, a man with scar-splitting lip, spat. "He is King Stannis, woman." She inclined her head. "Then, King Stannis, I come under peace banner." "Me." The scarred guard eyed the Blackfish's men, counted breaths, and finally nodded. "Sir Axel Florent will escort you. Your weapons remain here." Brynden bristled, but Catelyn laid a calming hand. "We want words, not blades." Surrendering steel felt like shedding skin, but she unclasped her dagger, handed it pommel first. The others followed. An escort formed, a dozen spearmen and 2 knights in flame-stamped surcoats. They threaded through the siege camp. No jovial songs here. Silence reigned save for distant hammering of smiths. Men knelt before iron braziers where coals glowed orange though midday sun climbed. They prayed in unison, murmuring Azer and Lightbringer. Smoke curled upward with pungent resin. Catelyn smelled juniper and something sharper, metallic, as though blood had been burnt. She drew cloak tighter. The pavilion of Stannis stood apart, plain dark green patched thrice, lacking any embroidery. Before its flap stood Sir Davos Seaworth, Onion Knight, wooden fingers clad in half-gloves. He bowed stiffly. "My lady, like Sir Brynden, His Grace awaits." "And shall." Inside the tent Stannis Baratheon loomed beside a makeshift table of raw planks. Candles guttered, set at each corner. Melisandre of Ashai stood opposite, crimson gown pooling like spilled wine. Her eyes glowed gentle lamplight, yet seemed to hold deeper embers within. Stannis himself wore plain boiled leather over ringmail. The crown circling his shaven temples looked wrought of iron bent forcibly, each point sharp as penance. He wasted no courtesy. "You come from my treacherous brother," he said, voice rough grit. "And from the boy who calls himself king in the north." Catelyn met his stare. "I come from 2 kings who would see the Lannister yoke broken. Spare me pious drivel. Renly stole my bannermen. The north sundered itself. Lannister misrule festers because oathbreakers unmade the realm's order." He leaned across the planks, knuckles white. "I am rightful king. That is the beginning and end. Bryndon's hand tensed at hilt that was not there, but Catelyn kept voice calm. Your grace, rightful or not, thrones may break beneath the weight of corpses piled for them. My husband died to uncover Lannister treachery. My daughters are hostages even now. Robb seeks justice, not dominion. Renly seeks crowns forged of false smiles. Stannis' mouth twisted. He cavorts in tourney while the realm groans. He will answer. Catelyn dared a step closer, meeting eyes hard enough to chip flint. Slaying your brother will not heal the realm. The Red Woman spoke then, voice mild as dusk-tide. The night is dark and full of terrors, Lady Stark. One must bring light or be devoured. Catelyn turned to her. And whose light? A foreign god's. Westeros has its gods already. The Seven, the Old, the Drowned. Must we add another to our quarrels? Depths. Melisandre's smile barely curved. The Lord of Light is no foreigner. He's the only true god. All others are shadows cast upon cave walls. Stannis cut through. Enough. Lady Stark, why have you risked my camp? She inhaled slow. To propose union. Renly marches with 40,000. Robb commands half the north and riverlands. Combine our might and King's Landing falls. Joffrey dies, Ned Stark's name is cleared, the kingdom restored. To whom? Stannis asked. To rightful kings, she began, but he barked a mirthless laugh. One rightful king. Me. His fist hit table. Candles shivered. Your son can style himself Prince of Winter, Warden beyond the neck. What he pleases, so long as he bends knee. Renly will bend or break. Robb will not yield southern oaths. Then he is traitor, and I will treat him as such. Bryndon's temper flashed. He stepped forward. Bold words from a man besieging his own family seat, while Lannisters feast in the capital. Stannis' cold gaze shifted like a blade, but Melisandre touched his sleeve, soft. The fires have shown victory, my king. Let shadows fight shadows. Let rightful blood shine. Stannis' broad shoulders lowered fraction. He addressed Catelyn. My brother dies soon, one way or other. His knights turncoat or perish. When that is done, Lady Stark, I will grant your daughters safe return. Honor for honor. But the North is part of my realm. I will not suffer secession. Catelyn felt weight crush lungs. My son will fight. Let him. When lion and wolf rend each other, the stag claims the field. The meeting ended thus, stone against stone, no spark of accord. They were escorted back under watch. Outside, dusk folded on camp. Braziers flared. Catelyn glimpsed Melisandre speaking to Sir Davos near the shore, the red silk of her sleeve fluttering like flame. The Onion Knight's face betrayed unease. She wondered what bargain he endured. Bryndon guided her to a small grain barn commandeered as guest quarters. They posted their own watch at door, though Stannis' men ringed the perimeter. Within the barn smelled of dust and old hay. Catelyn sank onto a crate, numb. He will not bend, she whispered. No, Bryndon said, voice tight. And if what I overheard is true, he plans to move by night. They spoke of skiffs on the narrow tide channels, of secret caves beneath the castle. She rubbed eyes gritty from travel. We must depart. Warn Renly. Bryndon nodded. Before dawn. Or we may be caught in whatever hell Stannis summons. Sleep came scant. Crickets sang outside until suddenly stilled, as if frightened by some unseen presence. In the small hours, a cold breath seemed to coil through the barn. Catelyn woke, heart hammering. Lantern wick burned low. She thought she heard footsteps paddling soft through mud outside, then a faint splash. Like something slipping into water. Silence returned, deeper than before. At first gray of pre-dawn, Bryndon roused all. They slipped from camp edge unlamented. Most watchers knelt at fiery altars, chanting. The Blackfish led through copses until camps were specks. They crossed a tidal flat as sun spilled copper. Catelyn glanced back only once, and what she saw riddled her with chill. Above Storm's End's colossal drum tower, a shadow twisted. The impossible silhouette of an antlered stag towering half again as tall as the parapet, formed of roiling smoke, as if a nightmare set loose against the dawn. She blinked. Clouds shifted. The shape dissolved. Perhaps mere trick of mists, yet dread slithered under her skin. They found their galley where left, though 2 rowers posted as guards lay dead, throats pinched shut by unseen garrotes. Brynden cursed, ordered bodies wrapped, and launched at once. Out upon the river again, the water seemed to pulse beneath, as though disturbed by hidden currents. Scarcely an hour downriver, they met a fisher skiff drifting awash with blood. Inside lay a single corpse, Renly's outrider, recognizable by green cloak patterned with golden stag. An arrow sprouted from throat, black shaft fletched in crimson. Brynden retrieved it, mouth grim. Not Stannis Make, nor Lannister. Catelyn felt dread deepen. War bred many knives, yet arrows seldom prophecy. Why kill a lone outrider? To hamper messages? But then why the flamboyant fletching? A warning. They rode harder. The wind failed midday, forcing labor. By dusk, Bitterbridge's fields appeared. But smoke rose where tents had been. Fires dotted the horizon, some dying, some still bright. And in the thick of charred pavilions, a great green tent sagged half-collapsed, antler standard torn and blackened. The galley scraped shore beside wreckage. Catelyn leapt down before Brynden could forbid, boots sinking into mud slick with ash. The air stank of burnt canvas, scorched grain, and a sweeter note. Blood. Men lay everywhere. Some with throats open clean, others contorted as if struck by invisible force. Horses gnashed at tether poles or roamed riderless. Near the center lay Renly Baratheon, or what remained. His torso had been riven chest to belly by a single gouge too neat for axe, too ragged for sword. Eyes stared upward, unclouded, astonished. His antler crown lay a yard away in pooling wine from an overturned cask. The gilded points dulled red. Brienne of Tarth knelt over him, armor spattered, face blank with grief's first numbness. Sir Loras, gauntlet slick with gore, reeled between rage and disbelief. Behind them, maesters attempted useless bandages, as if stitching halves of sundered realm. Catelyn approached on trembling legs. Brienne's head lifted. Tears streaked dusty cheeks. "I could not see," she whispered. "Shadow killed him. My blade passed through air." Loras seized Catelyn's shoulders. "Did Stannis send you? Is this his treachery?" His voice cracked, grief like acid corroding courtesy. Guards moved to draw steel, but Brynden interposed, shouting, "Peace." Catelyn answered quietly yet firm. "We spoke with Stannis at dawn. He swore vengeance, but he was still besieging Storm's End when we left." "Lies." Loras roared, yet his eyes flicked to Brienne's shell-shocked face. She shook head faintly. "Shadow," she repeated, and something inside her seemed to break. She doubled over, sobbing, shoulders shaking like branches in gale. Chaos frothed. Tyrell knights argued with Stormlanders, footmen hurled accusations. Already some carts creaked away, banners hidden beneath cloaks. Without Renly, their cause lay as broken as his breastbone. Catelyn realized how quick allegiance could rot when its trunk was felled. She fought through throng to Sir Rendil Tarly, scar-lined face set in soldier's pragmatism. "Renly is dead," he growled before she spoke. "Stormlanders will not follow the Reach. Half march home by dawn, the rest may bend knee to Stannis. Stannis will claim the whole," she said. "Yet Stannis cannot hope to stand against Lannisters and rob both. Will you throw swords at his feet and pray?" Tarly's eyes narrowed. "What does the wolf propose?" She swallowed bitterness. "A new accord. My son offers alliance still. Against Lannisters, against false kings. Unite North and South under 2 thrones but one purpose." Tarly considered, but voices rose around. Hightower captains binding wounded. Fossaway cousins quarreling. Disorder would devour them before any pact forged. She turned to Brynden. "We must salvage what we can." Night descended in smoldering chokes of smoke. Catelyn convened Tyrell and Stormland commanders beneath a torn pavilion lit by guttering torches. She recounted Stannis' unyielding stance, Renly's murdered state, Lannister proximity, Robb's victories and desire for just rule. She spoke until throat raw, weaving grief into caution, caution into hope. Some listened, some scoffed, some slipped away into dark. By morning, fewer than 10,000 remained, mostly Reachmen bound by Mace Tyrell's distant command. Sir Loras refused parley. He would ride for vengeance against Stannis or die. Brienne insisted on accompanying him. Her honor demanded justice. They departed with 200 Rainbow Guard survivors, green and blue cloaks, whipping in damp dawn. Catelyn watched them vanish, heart heavy. She spent that day gathering shards, Florent levies willing to follow her north, Tarly outriders who grumbled but agreed the Lannisters posed graver threat, a score of engineers with mangonels easily hauled. She drafted swift letters to Robb via Raven, Renly slain by strange sorcery, Stannis rising, proposal for adoption of these new troops under northern pay. She dared ask for grain wagons southbound, citing Reach harvests as exchange. She sealed with wax warmed over dwindling campfire. When final tallies done, Catelyn found herself leader, by default, of near 8,000. Brynden would command. They struck banners of stag, raised blank field in its stead. The men called her quietly the Copper Lady, copper for Tully hair and for coin minted anew from chaos. She did not correct them. Before departure she stood again where Renly lay. The maesters had sown his chest, laid scented herbs. His crown remained where he had fallen, crusted now with drying wine. She lifted it, weight surprising, antlers delicate tines deadly sharp. For a moment she considered bringing it north, trophy of folly, or east, a warning. Instead she set it upon the bier beside his folded hands. "May the gods judge gently," she whispered. "You were young and bright." They marched at dawn 2 days later, leaving Bitterbridge a graveyard of banners. Rumor traveled swifter than horse. Stannis' fleet wrecked by sudden storm. Sir Courtenay Penrose slain, Storm's End surrendered. Others murmured of a red comet newly blazed in eastern sky, herald of dragons, or doom. Catelyn pushed such talk aside. The road demanded step after step. Their column wound north along the Roserad, fields ripe with barley shimmering gold. Farmers watched from hedges, uncertain which ghost of king now passed. Catelyn rode near front, Brynden at her flank. A Tyrell captain named Sir Colin Flowers, rear guard. Scouts ventured far, once returning with news of Lannister outriders skirting miles east, crimson cloaks fluttering. Another time they found a gibbet where 4 of Renly's guard swung, tongues blackened, shields inverted to show stag pierced by fiery heart. Message clear enough. One dusky evening a raven wheeled overhead and landed upon Brynden's wrist, Robb's seal. They gathered under elm to read by lantern. The king in the north accepted her bold treaty, though he cautioned mistrust of southern lords whose vows shifted like river silt. He would send 3,000 riders south to meet them near the Blackwater. Unify forces before strike at King's Landing. He urged speed but cautioned secrecy. Tywin had left Harrenhal with main army, heading south across Gold Road, intent unknown. That night, as soldiers dozed in circles of lamplight, Catelyn walked alone to an abandoned shrine of the Seven by roadside. Roof half collapsed, statues cracked, yet candles still stood upon broken altar, kicked over by looters perhaps. She set them upright, struck flint. Tiny flames licked stone faces of mother, warrior, stranger. She knelt dully and let wax drip upon clasped hands. "Guide him," she murmured, meaning Robb, meaning all her scattered children. "Keep his heart whole. Let not swords and crowns devour him." Wind sighed through roof beams. Candles wavered. She thought she heard faint footfalls, turned, found only shadow. Yet when she faced altar again a 7th flame danced, though she had lit but 6. Stranger's stone face showed cracks like tears. She backed away, unnerved, throat tight. Days merged, leagues unscrolling like parchment. They reached the Manderford crossing where Tyrell levies once camped, now empty, but for charcoaled cookfires. There Catelyn allowed day of rest. She met with Sir Colin and Brynden to plan supplies, discuss rumored sellsword companies roaming. At noon a rider galloped in, dust-shrouded, horse-lathered. He bore sigil of Tarly. Breath ragged, he delivered thus. Sir Randall engages Lannister van near Prince's Pass, sends call for aid. 3,000 lions heavy horse. Brynden frowned. We cannot divide further. Catelyn weighed. Tarly had grudged loyalty, yet if left unaided, his defeat would gift Tywin fresh prisoners, and his leaving Renly's deathbed to follow her would seem wasted trust. She said, dispatch 500 best bowmen. Light horse. They harry Lannister flanks, then cut west to rejoin, show Tywin we still breathe. Brynden nodded, though misgivings lined eyes. The detachment rode by dusk, banners bare so Lannisters might misjudge them as Stormland remnants. That night a frost fell, unseasonal bite. Troops huddled coughing. Catelyn dreamed of direwolves howling across a field of burning antlers. When she woke the sky in east glowed dull red, though sun not yet risen. Some said a comet indeed. Others claimed wildfire at King's Landing. Scouts rode to High Ridge, returned at speed. No comet. Flames upon horizon, massive. Catelyn's gut twisted cold. She mounted, and with Brynden climbed ridge. Far off, a pillar of smoke, boiled black against dawn's pallor, too distant to mark clearly, yet luminous cracks pulsed within, green flashes clawing sky. She recognized wildfire's hue, the drink of alchemists. King's Landing burns? Brynden muttered. Or Stannis' fleet? She whispered. Either way, chaos deepened. Messenger birds winged in by midday. One carried parchment from Edric Mallister. A sea battle fought at Blackwater Rush. Wildfire unleashed. Stannis repelled with heavy loss. Many ships aflame. Rumor of dwarf hand commanding defense. Another raven from Riverrun. Edmure victorious at Stone Mill holding Tywin's vanguard. Yet, Robb still south of the Twins, campaigning near Crag. War's tapestry tangled further. Catelyn felt pulled limb from limb. Lannisters withheld before Riverrun, yet Tywin free. Stannis crippled. Renly dead. Robb distant. She shepherded 8,000 unsworn men through tinderbox of fractured loyalties. Despair nipped her heels like northern chill. That dusk Sir Colin approached. Many here murmur, he confessed, voice low. They marched for Renly's crown. With him gone, they'd march home. Unless a guide of noble blood secures purpose. His eyes flicked meaningfully to her. I have no claimants south, she said. Blood weds blood. You are Tully, Riverland's root. Marry some lord here, bind us. She recoiled, as if struck. I have a husband, dead yet still my oath. Colin bowed, chastened yet persistent. I speak for men frightened. They need symbol. That symbol is justice. She answered. And justice leads north. He departed unsatisfied, but seeds of doubt had sprouted among ranks. That night, while she brooded near campfire, an unexpected figure slipped from shadows. Lady Margaery Tyrell. Her hair braided plain, cloak travel worn. 2 guards flanked, but she waved them off. Catelyn rose, astonished. I followed at distance after Bitterbridge, Margaery said softly. Too dangerous nearer. Loras hunts vengeance, but vengeance blinds. I come to save our people. Catelyn gestured for seat, upon log. How? My father gathers strength at Highgarden. He will not kneel to Stannis, who murders kin, nor trust Lannisters. If your son proves ally, reach grain and gold could be his. Nammy mean. Hope flared like spark on dry tinder. Can you persuade Lord Mace? A small smile. Fathers are often persuaded by daughters they cherish. She leaned in. But I must speak to Robb myself, see the measure of this northern king. And he must see me, not as promise of dowry, but as partner. Bring me to him. Catelyn studied the girl. No, the young woman. Eyes glittering with intellect sharper than court gossip credited. It is long road. I have ridden longer to chase hawks. A twinkle, then solemn again. Let us ride together, Every league we wait. Lannisters tighten grip. After brief council, Brynden agreed. Small escort would break from army, bear Catelyn and Margaery north, along quieter roads, while main host marched to rendezvous with Robb's riders near Wendwater. He appointed Sir Colin commander in her absence, a compromise accepted grudgingly. 2 days later, Catelyn rode under pale moon, Margaery at side, Brynden and 10 archers trailing. They crossed through lands still green, though war left bruises. Burnt mills, trampled vineyards, streams choked with corpses. Along one ford, they found a scattering of small folk hanged from sycamore, throats stuffed with wolf fur, phrase perhaps mocking northern sigil, or Lannister message. Margaery's cheeks paled, but she kept seat, lips pressed. At an abandoned inn by Old Stone Bridge, they paused to water horses. Inside, dust-coated benches like snow. Margaery traced finger across bar, thoughtful. "My ladies at court said war sings of glory. I hear only dirges." Catelyn poured mead from cask, miraculously unspoiled. "Glory is tale men sell to children. War is mothers weeping. Now?" Margaery met her gaze, then set chin firm. "Then let us write another tale." They pressed northward. One dawn, a golden-shaped soared overhead on hidden thermals. A massive eagle, wings outspread. Brynden squinted. Rebel scouts. Yet no arrow flew. The eagle circled thrice, then veered away. Hours later, a single rider approached, banner of direwolf upon black field. He hailed. With galloping heart she recognized Hallis Mullen, Robb's sworn shield. He brought parchment smelling of horse sweat, bearing Robb's swift reply. "Proceed to Ashmark, where I linger. Warm welcome awaits." But the message carried darker ink beneath. Reports of Bolton raids east, Karstark mutterings of vengeance still unslaked, Frey envoys demanding twin hostages. Robb's alliances frayed even as victories stacked. Catelyn clenched fist around ladder. The realm seemed a ship, sprung leaks on every plank, yet still she must row. They diverted west, skirting Red Lake, through thick copses of cedar. Margaery disguised in dun cloak to avoid Tyrell heraldry. Villages along route greeted them warily. Some offered bread, others bolted shutters. Rumors proceeded: Stag King slain by sorcery, Wolf Queen wandering, Dragon Queen across narrow sea with fireborn beasts. At each firelit hall, they slept. The tapestry of politics redrew itself. One evening, as they camped upon ridge overlooking silvered vineyards, Margaery approached Catelyn with sprig of dried lavender braided into hair. "All day I considered, if Robb desires north free, Reach may walk same path. But father clings to old oaths. Persuasion requires more than words." "What then?" Catelyn asked. "Marriage, my lady. Not to Robb. He is promised perhaps. But to your brother Edmure, or other Riverlord. Tie, reach to Riverlands. Lannister Zeget at River Run ends. Father gains foothold in Trident, Robb safe, south flank. Nilendesa." Catelyn's brows rose. "Edmure unwed, though often betrothed and lost. Let me meet him." A playful spark danced. "I have tamed hearts sterner." Catelyn chuckled despite exhaustion. "I will send Raven when able." They pushed on. Near Tumblestone's upper forks they encountered outriders bearing Twin Towers badges. Freymen. Hostile glances sharpened at sight of direwolf. Brynden ordered bows ready. The Frey sergeant spat challenge. "Who rides?" Upon answer he sneered. "Blackfish. Your king off chasing skirts west while our Lord Walder guards his haven?" "Huh." Brynden let arrow point answer. The Freys retreated grumbling. Tension thickened. Nights grew colder, breath plumed white. They crossed fields stripped bare by foragers. Earth hard beneath hoof. One dawn, hoarfrost coated tents like draped lace. Brynden found Catelyn rubbing hands at embers. "Scouts say Lannister vanguard ahead, 200 spears. We divert east." "Man." She nodded, but Margaery approached, cheeks flush pink. "If we continue dancing round lions, winter will overtake." Catelyn agreed. They risked a dash across open heath at midday. Archers rode ahead, arrows knocked. Twice trumpets echoed from distant ridges, but no riders gave chase. By dusk, they reached a stand of black pine at foot of Ashmark Hills. Torches flickered among trunks, northern sentries. Alice welcomed them through barricade of cartwood. At heart of camp, inside rough long hall of felled cedar, Robb Stark stood over map table. Gray direwolf curled at feet. He looked taller than memory, hair longer, eyes holding somber weight of king burden. When Catelyn entered, conversation ceased. He turned, and in an instant, formality cracked. He stepped round table and folded her into fierce embrace. She pressed face to his leather jerkin, inhaling smoke and pine. Tears stung eyes, but she held them. These men must see their king steady. Robb released her, nodding to Margaery. "Lady Tyrell, you honor my hall." Margaery offered courteous dip. "Your grace, I bring olive branch and harvest both." Introductions flowed. Brynden reported, maps unfurled. Catelyn listened as Robb explained recent gains. Seizure of Ashmark, capture of Sir Stafford Lannister, yet losses prowling at edges. He spoke of Karstark's thirst for Lannister blood, of Bolton's intrigues. Catelyn felt tremors. The kingdom she had hoped to weld seemed fracturing within. That night, after councils ended and fires burned low, she sat outside the hall watching snowflakes drift. The first real snow of season, delicate as ash. Footsteps approached. Robb settled beside her on wooden stump. "Mother," he began, voice low. "Your letters paint hope, yet I fear we trade one southern thorn for another." She looked at him. Not the boy who chased kittens, but a man carved swift by war. "Hope is not folly," she said. "Renly's men will follow. Margaery's father brings food, we need both." He exhaled, white cloud in frigid air. "And what price? Reachmen may demand Riverlands when war ends. Freys mutter about heirs. I ride knife's edge." "Ah." She laid hand atop his, noting calluses. "Knife's edge is still path forward. Stand still and you bleed anyway." He smiled, weary. "You have more courage than host of knights, mother. Courage is loving sons enough to drag them through horror." She squeezed, then released, pointing to sky where stars shimmered through cloud gaps. "There, the ice dragon." "I remember," he whispered. "You told us tales. Stories keep children warm. They keep kings wise too. Remember." Then, morning dawned, steel blue. Councils resumed with Margaery present. She spoke politics with grace, proposing marriage ties, grain routes escorted by Reach cavalry, joint campaign after winter to crush Lannisport. Many northern lords eyed her warily, but her poise disarmed. Even Greatjon Umber murmured approval. Girls got fire. That afternoon Edmure arrived with river knights. When introduced, his eyebrows leapt at Margaery's smile. Catelyn watched possibilities unfurl like catapult arm. Yet storm clouds gather as tales insist. Ravens came. Stannis regrouping at Dragonstone, forging new fleet despite losses. Tywin pivoting south with 80,000. Balon Greyjoy seizing Moat Cailin in North's rear. Robb's brow nodded. Too many foes at too many doors. Catelyn sought solutions. In quiet tent with Brynden and Margaery, she envisioned tri-alliance. North River, Reach. Formally declare independence of three kingdoms bound by pact of mutual defense. Share trade privileges. Rotate hostages of goodwill. A new order to counter Iron Throne's despotism. They drafted charter on vellum, sealing with direwolf, trout, golden rose. But charters alone seldom deter swords. Ashmark's fields froze harder each dawn. Supplies thinned. Margaery's promised caravans delayed, bandits or winter roads. Rumor said Tywin massed at Sarsfield. Robb convened war council. He would march east to River Run, secure river crossings before Tywin, then strike at Harrenhal to cut supply. Leave Bolton to guard north frontier. Trust Frey to hold twins. Catelyn felt unease coil. Frey trust brittle. Bolton ambition chill tight. but she placed faith in her son's judgment. She would ride south with Edmure to treat with Lord Tully, secure River Run's grain barns for winter. Brynden would scout ahead, Margaery elected to accompany. "To witness my future lands," she teased Edmure, who blushed red as River Run salmon. On cusp of departure, Grey Wind prowled restless. Catelyn scratched behind his ears. The dire wolf woofed, gaze on tree line. She followed look, and glimpsed fleeting silhouette across snow. Tall, antler-shadowed, then gone. A trick of morning fog, yet heart stuttered. The column set off across blank hills. Catelyn rode near Margaery and Edmure, their chatter lightened mood. Yet soon ravens swooped with dire tidings. Bolton's bastard sacked Hornwood. Karstark executed Lannister captives unbidden. And worse, Frey hostages taken by Westerners, Frey banners wavering. Thus, as first heavy snow muffled earth and night fell early, Catelyn understood. Alliances fracture like thin ice when weight grows. She recalled Renly's bright host rotting overnight. Stannis' shadow, Lannister cunning. Yet amid grim swirl of factions, she sensed spark still within, the moment of meals at broken altar, and light's seventh flame, though she lit but 6. That spark drove her now. For the sake of her children and realm's ragged soul, she would forge fires where darkness pool. Against swords and sorcery, against spite and shadow, she would be the copper coin that bought tomorrow. And so the march continued under veiled moon. Snow crunching, breath clouding. Somewhere far to south wildfire still smoldered. Somewhere east dragons stirred. Somewhere west wolves howled across Ironman shores. Yet in the quiet between hoofbeats, Catelyn Stark whispered names. Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Rickon, and each was a heartbeat, a promise, a step upon this unending road through frost and flame toward dawn. No prophecy could foretell. Gao, Ki, Genji Gao. Snow chattered beneath hooves, with a brittle complaint of glass, crushed under boot. Long columns of men, horses and supply carts inched across the ridge road east of the Tumblestone, banners limp in a wind as thin as a knife point. Winter's first true breath pressed against every cloak, but the sky overhead stayed low and gray, as though the clouds themselves feared to break open, lest they be scourged by the wind. From her saddle near the vanguard, Catelyn Stark surveyed the creeping train and felt the immense unspoken weight that settled upon each marcher's shoulders. Every step southward stretched faith a little thinner. Faith in oaths, in banners, in kings, even in the shape of the realm itself. Faith in tomorrow. The bones of autumn clattered behind them. To the north, beyond the folding hills, lay Seaguard's cold beaches and the salt-stinking fleets of the iron-born raiders that harried every harbor from the Westerlands to White Harbor. To the west, the hills swelled toward the crag, and over the mountain passes into the gold-striped heart of the Lannisters, where Lord Tywin's host gathered like a thunderhead. And before them, in the wide south, there opened the reach, ripe with granaries but rife with fresh uncertainty, now that Renly's crown lay broken on a bier. Edmure, riding at the head of the river lords, had been the first to remark that the road felt haunted by more than winter. "Every valley has a memory," he said, casting sidelong glances at the darkling villages they passed. "The land is listening." Catelyn thought he might be right. Burnt farmsteads lay along the road like scabbed lesions. Orchards stood neglected, apples blackening in frost. The silence of fields told of small folk fled or hidden in cellars, hearts clenched at the sound of each passing hoof. Beside her, Margaery Tyrell rode astride a fleet-footed palfrey, hood of sable trimmed in fox white. The girl, no, the woman, Catelyn corrected, met the cold with a composure that belied her youth. She had discarded gold and green silks for a cloak, the muted brown of riverbank reeds. Only a brooch of a single unfurling rose hinted at her birth. Each noon, when the march halted for barley gruel and watered wine, Margaery spoke quietly with the captains of the newly loyal Reachmen, taking the measure of men whose trust was as brittle as the ice in the puddles. Some captains admired her courage. Others resented traveling under a wolf banner, with lion spears looming ahead. Still, others saw in her the promise of old oaths reborn. However they whispered, Catelyn saw clearly that the girl's presence steadied the line as surely as a column of male armored guards. Grace could be a weapon, share-edge and bright between gauntlets. Brynden Tully, the Blackfish, ranged far ahead, scouting the uplands and river crossings with a small cadre of horse archers. He had taken to wearing a cloak of dark mottled fur, rank with the musk of wet dog, but near invisible against a winter thicket. Often, at dusk, his quiet figure appeared at Catelyn's stirrup like a crow on a branch, offering terse reports. Lannister outriders probing, Frey envoys sighted and then lost, Karstark scouts shadowing from the east. He spoke increasingly of ghosts dogging them, eyes in every copse, lights in every ruin, the smell of unnatural fire drifting in the night wind. Catelyn listened and felt her own unease multiply. 5 days after departing Ashmark, they crested a rise and caught first sight of Riverrun's watchtowers, their red stone softened by distance, but resolute as ever. The blue and silver banners of House Tully snapping like shards of water in the pale light. A sigh rustled through the host. Home for the Riverlords, walls for the Reachmen, something known in a world of shifting loyalties. But Brynden's warning accompanied the sight. Lannister vanguard rides close behind, he said, gesturing with his rein hand to a smear of dust along the western horizon. 500 at least. Spears and mounted crossbow. They keep just beyond arrow range. Skirmishers meant to test our tale. His eyes, hawk-sharp even in failing light, flicked toward the milling lines behind them. The men are tired. Catelyn knew it. Horses walked with heads low. Boots scraped slow, deliberate. 3 weeks of forced marches, skirmishing, tension, had stripped flesh from more than a few cheeks. Yet within her, there stirred the same fierce resolve that had led Ned from Moat Cailin toward Robert's War so many years past. She breathed deep, tasting ash, winter, and iron. We reach the Tumblestone Ford before moonrise, she said. Once we hold the crossings, Tywin's riders will not flank us. She and Edmure conferred with the captains beneath a wind-blasted oak. They would press through dusk, abandon half the carts heavy with loot from Ashmark to lighten the baggage, and double the outriders to screen flanks. Sir Cullen Flowers urged rest, wary of pushing men to mutiny, but Margaery's calm voice floated through the council. Soldiers endure more when purpose is clear, she said. She offered her own palfrey's oats to share among the war horses as gesture of shared sacrifice. The concession, small, symbolic, doused discontent like water on embers. They marched. Night arrived quickly, black as drowned stone. Torches were forbidden. Only the moon, thin and brittle, guided them. The host moved like a long serpent of whispers and clinking mail. Sense of dread thickening with each stride. Somewhere behind, a horn gave a single long, low note. Lannister scouts, Catelyn knew. A hunter's call on a winding track. They reached the ford at last, the tumblestone wide and dark beneath frozen crust. Riverrun's towers glimmered with torch fires across the water, but no cheering party greeted them. Instead, at midstream, Catelyn saw shapes half submerged, spikes of sharpened ash jutting from icy water. A makeshift barricade. Riverrun's garrison, wary of enemies wearing false banners, had spiked the ford against crossing. Edmure cursed softly. My own walls keep me out. He splashed forward on horseback to parley with sentries stationed atop the rock mound near mid-current. Shouts flew back and forth. Then torches flared on Riverrun's ramparts, signaling recognition. An hour later, hardy riverfolk had pulled 3 of the wooden stakes aside, carving a narrow, treacherous path for the column. Catelyn's heart slowed only when she felt the hooves of her horse strike the stones of her father's bridge, and saw the first glimmer of hearth fires inside the courtyard. The arrival that followed was no triumph. It was a weary exhale. Men trudged beneath the barbican archway, too spent to cheer, and the courtyard quickly filled with the clatter of arms stacked, the groans of settling packs, the muttered prayers for hot broth. Servants of House Tully led draft horses to stables, while maesters hurried toward a sprawling field hospital, where the wounded were laid on straw duidon. Even in the gloom, Catelyn saw that Riverrun had not gone unscarred. Patches of scorched mortar on the outer tower, a shattered catapult spar propped near the Godswood Gate. Inside the great hall, banners of leaping trout hung above a long table where Lord Hoster's carved chair now stood empty. The sight struck Catelyn like a mailed fist. Her father's absence filled the air as tangibly as incense. Echoes seemed sharper, shadows longer. Edmure made the formal proclamation that the Tully banners had returned with allied reachmen, that the North welcomed them. Wine was poured, thin wistful vintage from the cellars, and bread and salt shared, binding loyalties anew. But beneath the ritual Catelyn sensed fresh fractures. Lord Jason Mallister, newly arrived from the western coasts, demanded immediate action against Lannisport's harbor forts. Septon Joseph lamented a shortage of wheat for the God's Feast. Sir Desmond Grell muttered about Karstark desertions. And when the lords dispersed to their assigned quarters, whispers swirled faster than autumn leaves. The Freys threatened to close the twins to Tyrell grain wagons unless Robb delivered Arya as hostage, an impossible demand, given Arya's unknown fate. Bolton men bickered with Blackwood bowmen over missing supply chests. Every conversation seemed a test of alliance. 3 nights later, while a sleet-laden wind peeled at the shutters, Robb Stark himself arrived under cover of darkness, escorted by Grey Wind and 200 picked riders. Catelyn rushed to meet him in the yard where torches hissed under the freezing rain. Mother and son embraced, and for a brief moment, the layered stresses of long campaigns fell from her shoulders like a wet cloak. Robb smelled of damp wool and horse sweat, but the steel in his eyes had hardened further since she left Ashmar. Victory tempered a young king quickly. Each conquest hammered him sharper. Each betrayal scorched another seam in his armor. Inside the solar, once Hoster's but now Robb's, they conferred deep into the night. Great John Umber sprawled by the hearth, gnawing on a joint of smoked mutton. Roose Bolton stood near the casement, shadows carving hollows beneath his cheekbones. Sir Wendell Manderley sat wheezing from the chill, while Lord Tytos Blackwood poured bitter wine. Margaery Tyrell, at Robb's invitation, took a place beside Catelyn, hands folded in her lap, listening. Robb surveyed the council. "Tywin Lannister will ride from Sarsfield at first thaw," he said. "Scouts put his strength at near 80,000, heavy with knights. He means to break through the Riverlands and retake the capital before the Queen Regent's grip founders. With Renly dead and Stannis bloodied, we stand between him and an undefended King's Landing." His jaw tightened. "I intend we stay there." Roose Bolton's hooded eyes glittered. "Your Grace proposes to meet the lion in open field?" Bolton's voice held the quiet coolness of water lapping a dungeon floor. "I propose we shape the battlefield first," Robb said. He swept aside a sheet covering a massive wooden map, riverlands cut and painted. Small keeps marked by 10-penny nails. Bridges by knife-scored notches. "Here." His finger tapped at the Red Fork's confluence near the ruined holdfast called the Sickle. "By February 2nd week, Tywin's van will reach these meadows. Flood the channels." A murmur spooled about the hall. Tytos Blackwood frowned. "The Sickle Valley feeds half a dozen hamlets. We flood it. We lose spring barley." Robb's voice hardened. "Paying the lion in crops is cheaper than in bones." Catelyn watched the debate roll. She felt pride at her son's command, yet fear at costs ahead. And behind every strategic measure, she sensed the silent void of still missing daughters. Sansa remained captive, Arya's fate lost somewhere between Harrenhal's dungeons and the wilds. She held hope like a glass rose, delicate, too easy to shatter. When the lords dispersed, only Catelyn, Robb, and Margaery remained. The storm outside scratched at the arrow slits. The young king folded arms, studying the hearth. "Lady Tyrell, I owe thanks. Your presence steadied uncertain hearts." Margaery dipped her head. "I am honored, Your Grace. The Reach will stand with you, but my father requires the comfort of visibility. Banners in the field, a betrothal perhaps." Her gaze flicked briefly to Edmure's name, unspoken. Robb's shoulders tensed. "My uncle has long sought to wed. If it secures grain and spears, we shall hold the feast here come thaw." "Danaen," Catelyn said quietly. "And you, Robb? Have you written Lady Rosalind Frey since your return?" A shadow crossed his face. "Soon." Duties pressed. Catelyn knew the truth. The king's heart had wandered among Western maidens, a matter still secret, but secrets wrought quick in wartime. Days blurred into councils, hunts for winter stores, dispatches arriving by raven hourly, tallies of spears, quarrels, sacks of oats, lists of dead from minor skirmishes, reports of ironborn ravages along flint cliffs, Deepwood Motte besieged, Bear Island sending plea for men, a realm torn on every axis. Amidst the whirlwind, Margaery grew into Riverrun's rhythm with unanticipated grace. She walked the infirmary tents distributing sachets of lavender and sage, coaxing wounded men to eat broth, listening to tales of home. She learned the names of every knight in her father's contingent, and half the river lords. At dusk, she took lyre lessons from Septa Betha, and filled the courtyard with half-familiar Reach melodies that made hardened archers wipe eyes with sleeves. Small wonder Edmure began to orbit her like a bright moon, bearing fresh-caught trout and reciting crude river ballads that made her laughter ring along the battlements. One snow-flecked morning, a raven came from King's Landing bearing news that the Golden Hand, Tyrion Lannister, had been dismissed, the Queen Regent purging the city of the dwarfs' allies. Another scroll reported that Lord Baelish had quit the capital, bound for the Vale with promises to rally Arryn banners. Catelyn's stomach cooled. Pettyer's ambitions were as slippery as oily fish. She warned Robb to beware Littlefinger's intrigues, but war forced risky friendships. Then, disaster at Duskendale. A Tyrell grain fleet sailing north under truce banners was ambushed by Sell-sail longships, flying black krakens. The ships burned, cargo lost, dozens of Reach sailors taken captive. Lord Macia's letter, laced with fury, announced he would withdraw half the new levies to defend the Mander Delta, unless compensated. Riverrun's Great Hall erupted in clamor as Riverlords cursed Greyjoys and Reachmen alike. Robb slammed fist upon the table, goblet clattering. Enough. If Manderly cogs cannot break the Krakens, we will. He ordered ravens to White Harbor requesting Lord Wyman to dispatch his merchant war galleys along the western approach. He commanded Roose Bolton to send light cavalry along the Green Fork, harrying any ironborn foraging parties. Bolton's pale eyes blinked once. "As you command." Yet Catelyn saw the faint curl of lips, an ambiguous whisper of satisfaction or contempt. That night, she sought Brynden in the watchtower. Wind keened through the murder holes, lanterns swayed. Below, water lapped grief slow against the walls of the keep, like the ticking of a dying clock. "He watches," Brynden said, meaning Roose. "He plays some game," she answered. "I cannot see the pieces. The Bolton game is flaying knives hidden beneath silk." He pulled his cloak tighter. And the phrase, "Walder sends ravens demanding his hostages attend the wedding of his 7th daughter." A jest, some say. Yet every jest hides fangs. "Number one." Catelyn rubbed fingers, numb from cold. "Robb's honor binds him. He will go. He'll go and walk into a nest of serpents." She thought of Renly's tent, of the shadow that sliced him open like a butcher divides a goat. Sir Colin had since sworn that glowing shapes whispered through the abandoned camp nights after, the restless spirits of betrayed men. Shadows, serpents, knives. The realm crawled with such monsters now. Winter deepened. The tumblestone iced near solid, allowing wagons to cross where boats once ferried. Riverrun stores dwindled quicker than casks arrived. Glover Bowman supplemented dinner tables by hunting wild boar in Riverrun's outer wood. Gray skies threatened heavier snows. In late February, a raven arrived bearing black ribbon. Dire news. Storm's End had fallen again, but not to Stannis. The fortress stood empty. Its garrison fled or mysteriously vanished. Sailors whispered of a dragon-winged shadow sweeping the battlements, of green fire bursting from arrow slits. Maesters dismissed it as soldiers' tales, yet unease sluiced through corridors. That evening, by a drafty window overlooking the frozen moat, Catelyn found Margaery scribbling letters. Candlelight painted the girl's hair copper red like a Tully's, as though the castle itself was claiming her. She paused at Catelyn's approach, sealing parchment with rose wax. "News grows darker," Margaery said. Her fingers trembled as she bit the edge of her lip. "My father will hold back harvest wagons until seas clear of Ironborn. He claims his duty is to his people first." She exhaled a small white plume in the frigid air. "But we all starve if breadlines remain in Highgarden." Catelyn touched her arm. "We will open the seas. Robb plans to ride west and break the Kraken's back at Moat Cailin, or send King Stannis a pact. Ironborn plunder his coast too." Margaery's eyes, brown as warm earth, lifted. "If Stannis still possesses fleet to spare, yes. Yet he and Melisandre wield powers that terrify sailors. They whisper of ghosts, birthed by blood." "Stories," Catelyn muttered. But she remembered Renly's tent and the impossible wound. Story and truth blurred often of late. Spring equinox approached, but brought no thaw. Snow piled calf-deep along riverbank. Axe blades rang in the godswood as men felled ancient elms for fire. Finally Robb gave the order: march west. They would break siege at Torrhen's Square, secure the King's Road through the Neck, and carve a safe road for grain from White Harbor. They would leave River Run defended by Tully garrison, Frey cohorts, and a company of reachmen under Sir Colin. Edmure and Margaery would wed at River Run sept ere the march, sealing the alliance in symbol, if not substance. The castle went from gloom to frantic preparation. Seamstresses worked through nights sewing gowns of river blue silk embroidered with lilies. Masons patched arrow scars along the walls. Blacksmiths reshod hundreds of horses. Despite the bustle, Catelyn sensed a grim undercurrent, like the tension before a surgical cut. The wedding day dawned clear. Rare blue sky stretched above white fields. The courtyard had been swept, banners hung fresh. Musicians plucked lutes by blazing braziers where mulled wines simmered. Edmure dressed in slashed doublet of trout silver and rose pink. Margaery wore flowing gown of winter cream trimmed with river pearls. The ceremony unfolded beneath the heart tree in River Run's godswood. Robb pronounced blessings in the name of the old gods, while Sept and Joseph intoned sevenfold vows. Snowflakes drifted through sunlight like pale petals. For 1 hour, war stepped back and grace took its place. But as the feast commenced inside the hall, a rider clattered into the yard, mud-caked, wild-eyed. The Ironborn had breached Moat Cailin by some dark art. The next causeway fallen. What's more, Dreadfort banners were reported riding south beside Kraken sigils. Reek, the bastard of Bolton's man, led the charge. The message struck the hall like a mace blow. Robb shot to his feet. Plates rattled as men rose. Edmure forgot his bride, half rising with sword part drawn before pausing, cheeks flushed with conflict. Margaery laid a calming hand on his arm. "The north bleeds," Robb growled. Grey wind paced, hackles bristling. "If Bolton betrays, then the wolf must remind all houses who wears the crown." Catelyn's heart hammered. Roose Bolton had ridden for the Neck under Robb's orders. Now his bastard marched with Krakens? Treachery upon treachery. She sought Brynden across the hall. He was already striding to Robb's side. "We ride tonight," the Blackfish said. "Light horses only. Cut ahead of the army. Reach the twins before Bolton does." Robb cursed the frozen roads but assented. He turned to Margaery and Edmure. "Hold River Run. Guard my mother. If Winter's heart breaks these walls, I vow I will tear the gates of Casterly Rock to feed you its gold." Then he was gone. Cloak billowing, grey wind at heel. Preparations roared through twilight. Horns blared, smithies flared. Men strapped saddlebags, filled flasks, sharpened blades. The old heart of House Stark seemed to beat within the courtyard stones, urging them onward. Catelyn watched her son mount his black courser, snow swirling like ash around them, and felt the wrenching fear of every mother who ever sent a child to war. She pressed a gloved kiss against his cheek. "Winter will end," she whispered. "Find the dawn, my son." He smiled, young again for a heartbeat. "The dawn will find us, mother." Then he wheeled and plunged through the gatehouse into night. In the days that followed, River Run bristled with uneasy stillness. Edmure and Margaery held morning councils, but dread swelled each raven's descent. Reports of Bolton riders striking Westerling caravans, Greyjoy longships pushing up the Fever River, Frey patrols turning coats and exacting tolls from northern messengers. Rumors smothered fact until every knock at the gate stirred swords from scabbards. One midnight, as sleep pattered like spent arrows on the slate roofs, Catelyn could not sleep. She wandered the ramparts, cloak flapping, breath ghost white. Half-frozen sentries saluted as she passed. In the east, caramel glow stained the sky. Fires across the distance, villages burning. She clutched the balustrade. How much more blood must salt the snow? Footsteps behind. Margaery appeared, shoulders draped in Edmure's cloak, though the groom himself dozed in their chamber. Her expression was carved from quiet steel. Together, they watched the distant flames. "Your Grace," the girl said softly. She had begun calling Catelyn that when no other queen remained with armies in the field. Fear is a weed. Cut one shoot and three sprout. But hope grows too, if nurtured. Catelyn managed a small smile. "You speak like a maester." "My grandmother's schooling?" Margaery replied. "Most plants feed or heal. Some poison. It's learning which leaf to brew and which to burn. Today I brewed a letter to Sunspear. House Martell despises lions near as much as wolves. And the Reach knows every secret trade wind to the south coast. I asked Prince Doran for counsel and friendship." Now, Catelyn exhaled mist. A kingdom held by letters and oaths, Lord Hoster would approve. She saw the younger woman's cheeks flush pink against the cold. A new alliance, blooming even as the land froze. Soon after, a horn blast from the gatehouse split the hush. Riders approaching under Tully colors. Catelyn and Margaery hurried below. The portcullis raised. Snow-lathered horses stumbled into the yard bearing 3 men near collapse. One wore the white cloak of a Winterfell outrider. Streaked with blood, he slid from saddle to knees, clutching a parchment sealed by Bolton flayed man's sigil. Overstamped by Kraken, his voice shook as he delivered his tale. Torhin Square burned, Deepwood Motte captured. The bastard of Bolton married to Asha Greyjoy in a cruel ceremony of iron and skin. Bolton's forces now raced for Barrowton, sacking each holdfast that resisted. Catelyn felt the courtyard sway. The North eaten from within. Robb far on the King's Road pursuing vengeance against the wrong foe. She steadied herself, mind flaring with warring instincts. Mother, envoy, commander, Tully, Stark. At last she looked to Margaery. "We must warn Robb," the younger woman said. "And we must hold this castle at all costs. If River Run falls, the realm unravels." Catelyn nodded. "I will write, for every maester's rookery from here to White Harbor. And you must ready the gates." "Edmure will command," Margaery said. "Edmure loves you, and love clouds judgment." Catelyn met her gaze. "Stand beside him. Guide him. The realm may depend on a bride's wisdom." Snow fell heavier that night, erasing footprints, cloaking corpses that lay frozen beyond the palisade. In the maester's turret, Catelyn penned ravens until dawn. To Robb, to Sir Wyman, to Lady Mage Mormont, to Galbart Glover in the Wolfswood, to Howland Reed in the Neck. She wrote until fingers cramped and ink smudged with tears she would deny if asked. When the last raven beat into gray sky, she descended to the courtyard. Barracks thudded with hammer and saw. Reachman drilled archers beneath the inner wall. Edmure strode about issuing orders with the anxious vigor of a man who senses doom sniffing the gates. At the well, Margaery stood distributing waterskins to stable boys, dress tucked beneath fur-lined riding skirt. The wedding jewels were gone. In their place she wore a simple woolen scarf, the deep blue of Tully River. The dye had stained her cheek where she wiped away a wisp of hair. She did not notice. Catelyn took the sight into her heart. Hope grows, she remembered. Even in war's bleak garden, a single winter rose can root if given warmth. Days later, an explosion of ravens, black as spilled ink. One carried Robb's seal. He had engaged Bolton scouts near Hagsmire, learned of treachery, turned his host north. But Frey banners refused passage at the Twins, demanding new concessions. Another letter bore the direwolf claw slash, Robb's secret cipher, pleading his mother by time, hold River Run until he could break through. Bolton's bastard closed fast behind him, Ironborn harrying flanks. And Tywin's men, freed of western sieges by Bolton's duplicity, now marched southeast to sever the neck entirely. Catelyn convened a war council by torchlight. Maps strewn, voices hoarse. They would hold. Riverrun had never yielded, not to river kings, not to rebel Blackfires, not to dragons. Its massive curtain walls rose from the waters. Its drawbridges spanned moats of icy depth. Yet this time, enemy came wearing the faces of on-a-time allies. Treachery chilled the blood more than steel. The first scouts arrived at dusk 2 days later. Frey outriders under bastard banners, demanding safe passage across Tully lands to assist in subduing the rebel north. Edmure, standing upon the barbican, spat down into the moat. Catelyn watched from the wall walk as the messenger rode off, face pale as wax. Ziga lines formed within hours, ramshackle at first, but swelled by dawn. Bolton spearmen with flayed man leathers, Frey crossbowmen in gray and blue ironborn reavers, bearing squid sigils black against snow. Above them flapped a new banner. Half kraken, half flayed man, united under a torn direwolf head. Catelyn stared until vision blurred. She thought of Bran's laughter, of Rickon's cherubic scowl, of Sansa's gentle songs, Arya's wild dance with swords. She saw Ned's quiet eyes beneath the executioner's sword, and felt the last warmth of his hand fade. And in that moment, something sparked in her chest. Hotter than grief, keener than fear. Not shadow, not serpent, a mother's wrath, a river's relentless will. She turned to the banner of flayed kraken and whispered, "You will break." Winter howled around the walls, curling through arrow slits like a starving wolf. Fires guttered, bells clanged, archers knocked. Riverrun braced for the storm. Beyond the hills, Robb Stark rode like a thunderbolt northward, gray wind ranging ahead, every beat of hoof bringing war to traitors' doors. But whether he would reach Riverrun before the jaws closed, whether hope might hold through ice and betrayal, only the dawns to come could know. And so the girl who had once been Catelyn Tully, the wife who had once been Lady Stark, the envoy who had stood between kings, now walked the battlements as a queen without crown, beneath a snow-laden sky, her cloak whipping like a banner of grief made flesh. Beneath her, the tumblestone carried winter's melt toward the distant sea. Unmindful of siege or sorrow, it flowed as it ever had, as it ever would, carving stone with the steady patience of water. Catelyn closed her eyes and breathed the cold until it burned her lungs, until memory of summer green died away, and only the truth of winter remained. When she opened them again, the world seemed carved of crystal and iron. She placed a gloved hand upon the parapet, and spoke in a voice that was both whisper and vow. Stark blood endures. The wind carried the words into the snow-veiled night, where somewhere beyond sight, nightingales still dreamt of spring.